So who would like to start with the questions? Oh, yes, sir.
Could you tell us a little bit about this? Like, did it play in India? Did it?
Sorry, I'm just going to repeat the question. So the question is, can we talk a little bit about HIS and sort of what happened to it? Did it play in India?
Yeah, it got a release in India. I think it did well at the box office because Malika came out the week before and kind of really expressed that she said that she did all her own nude scenes, so all the 14-year-old boys in America then clamoured to the theatre to see it, so they managed to make their money back, but it was a pretty big critical flop. They didn't get a US release as far as I know. I know you can buy the DVD on Amazon. So.
Well, and how far was the finished product, would you say, from sort of Jennifer's hope for it, or from what she had expected it to be?
Look, I'm in a privileged and difficult position because I was actually in LA working on an EPK, which was a separate project to this for his, and I got to see Jennifer's mysterious cut. It was beautiful. And it was European and languid and all those things, but it's quite different to the one they released. They needed to release something that was going to work in India. So yeah, it's quite different. So there's a cut somewhere out there that will never see the light of day.
It seemed like there were moments where her relationship with the producer were sort of strained, but then other times when they were quite close.
Yes.
And subsequent to what happened, I mean, has their relationship maintained, or is it?
No, they haven't spoken since. Yeah. So it's. I have a dream of reuniting them, but I could end up dead in the process. So I don't know if it's possible. I would love to because they're two of my. Well, I've known Jennifer for 5 years now, and Govind I've known since I was 20. 16 years, and so it's a long time.
So was Govind more your entree into this movie?
Yes, yeah. I was visiting him in Mumbai, and he begged me to babysit Sydney because Jennifer didn't bring a nanny. I wanted to get out of India and go to Kabul, and I couldn't because I needed a babysit. But then after spending a week with Jennifer, I just wanted to stay. I thought this could be a good film.
How does Jennifer feel about the way that she's portrayed in the film? The questioner feels that it's quite unsympathetic, which is certainly a matter of opinion, and we'll come back to that. But how does Jennifer feel about how she comes off in the film?
In the documentary, yes. Look. I showed her a rough cut back in November, and it was really odd to sit there with Sid and Jen in the lounge room, and Jim and Zeppelin. We all sat there together, Zeppelin's the dog. And we sat down all together and watched it, and I was like quite nervously sitting in between them on the laptop, watching on the laptop. And she was devastated when she saw some of the scenes of her, but she didn't want me to take them out. She said, I'm happy for you to show that if you give it context and you show why I'm breaking down. And she's such an expressive, open person. She doesn't mind everyone seeing her in every incarnation. And that was kind of why I fell in love with her. She's a great subject.
I'm just sort of interested in what the audience thinks, because this is my second time seeing the film, and I don't find her unsympathetic on the second viewing. So just by applause, how many people find her sympathetic? And then for the others, unsympathetic. Okay. Yeah, I mean, certainly.
I'm actually watching it this time. I was kind of cringing in a couple of moments going, God, I hope people don't think she's a bad mother. Like at the beginning when Sydney's all upset, she's like, I just want to focus on the film. And Jennifer is so passionate about cinema, I think she can get kind of very tunnel vision and just be like, I've just got to work on the film, and she can forget everything else. But I feel that over the course of the film, she grows and she learns to be a better parent, and through that she's able to find love, and she's able to reconcile all the things that happened on his, and now she's got a movie that's coming out very soon, and she's got another one that's about to go into production with Tim Roth in the lead role. Yeah. So she's survived, which is great. Yeah.
And so you went back 4 years later to sort of catch up with her. Did you feel that was an important add-on, like that it was important to have that in the film to sort of see where she was at now, because she seems completely different?
Totally. Look, we got the film to a good rough cut, and I couldn't handle the end of it because it was too depressing. And I didn't realise I'd made like a kind of a funny film. I noticed everyone laughs a lot through it. I didn't realise it was amusing until we showed it to people and everyone laughed. And I was quite upset because I was like, this is a serious film. It's a female filmmaker struggling, and everyone was like, it's hysterical. And I realised that this was actually a great thing about the film, that awkward kind of tragedy But then it ended and it was so depressing. I thought, I can't leave the audience on she loses her film and look at it. You know, the audience would be like, oh, that's terrible. So I thought, I've got to go back. So I went back in November and, just shot the reality of, I didn't want to set it up. I just turned up and that's what we were doing. We were drawing strange pictures in the house and I thought, why not? So we filmed that and I think it was very important to end it so the audience didn't feel it was another boxing Helena. She wasn't going to have a 15-year hiatus, and she learned something from it, and she was still joyful, and she wasn't bitter about the experience. Yeah.
Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. I have a comment to the question. My comment, I absolutely loved it. And second thing, my question is, what Jennifer at the end says there are things that I would have done differently, and then many things I probably would do exactly the same. What are the things she might have done differently, if there are any you can share with us?
Okay, so just the question. What are the things that Jennifer in the film says there are things she would have done differently, and is Penny sort of privy to what those things are, and can she share them with us?
Oh God, it's hard to speak for Jennifer, but I guess I was there for 8 months, so the things that I can comfortably say that she would do differently are, she would probably have bought an American script supervisor. I don't know if anyone's familiar with cinema script supervisors like continuity. It's very important. And one of the first Indian films she watched, she couldn't get over the fact that in one scene a woman had a baby in her arms and she walked through a door, and on the next cut there was no baby in her arms. And so continuity, it doesn't happen much.
That's a bad mother, by the way.
Bad mother, bad continuity, exactly. So that was in the back of her mind, and then of course we actually brought over an American script supervisor. We brought them a bit later, and I think she learned a bit of Hindi, and I think look, I don't know. There's so many things that I don't feel I could say because I don't know exactly what she would
Well, then
want.
she seems like such a mercurial spirit that one day she'd say, these are the things I would change, and then maybe the next day she'd say, actually, this is what we would change.
Yeah. Well, I think the things she would change are things that, things were left quite loose, and Jennifer is quite comfortable just going with the flow, but I think in India that's a danger. You have to you can be open and go with the flow, but I think you have to also have some things locked down, and she just took that for granted because in the other films there was someone else handling all that. So yeah, she just assumed a lot. So I don't think the next time she makes a film there, she wants to go back and make another one, and so she won't assume as much. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a comment and a question, and in terms of you say how the film sort of does comedy, if anybody's ever traveled in India, sometimes the experience itself it's incredibly two different worlds, and you experience facing comedy, but then you come back, or at that time it might be serious, but when you come back it might be a little bit lighthearted. And of course when you see the set, the whole chaos around the setup, my question is, how does a woman, an American filmmaker, go to India and make a film, and her colorful languages and how she carries on would have had some input to that as well? Because I mean, you see how men sort of react a little differently, and of course in India and Bollywood you don't see too many Indian film women in the film industry. So how does that all come in together?
Okay, so we're fortunate to have someone who's quite familiar with India as a place of, I guess, multiple stories and sort of chaotic comedy, impromptu comedy in many ways. And so I guess the question is, what was it like for a woman director and an outsider to exist in that world that sort of has its own way of functioning? She would bring her own way of functioning, and how do those two things, I mean, apart from what we've seen in the film about how they meshed, were there other challenges?
Look, I think it was difficult for her being a woman, despite the fact that, in the hierarchy as a director, she could give orders and they'd have to listen. But look, it was very difficult, but it's like an invisible problem in that you can feel it, but you can't put your finger on, is it chauvinism, is it this, is it that? And so there's, someone put it really well the other day, an interviewer, she said there's like a cultural chauvinism, and I think there was very much that, and the fact that she was a woman. But Jennifer, with her, truck driver language and, her tattoos, and oh my God, sometimes we go onto set, and I once wore I wore a white camisole under a black top, and I was pulled up by one of the ADs and said, you can't wear that. We can see your camisole. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Jennifer would come to set in like black lace bras with see-through shirts, and I was scared for her. But she had her tattoos, and she was happy to, you know, show her underwear. And I think there was some kind of power in that. At first I thought, oh no, don't do that, they're going to look at you differently. But they couldn't, it was like she was sexless. They couldn't put their finger on it because she's a woman, but then she kind of speaks like a truck driver, and she swears, and she's powerful, but she's a mother, and she's got breasts, and there's all these things that, it's almost like she was from another planet. And I think in that way, they admired her and loved her, but they stopped looking at her as a woman in a way. So I think that was how she survived there, personally. I think if she was a little softer or a little more feminine, it would have been a lot harder, and she wouldn't have been able to fight through it. Yeah.
Yes.
What was the experience like for you shooting in India?
Yeah, I mean, you were there for all of that as well, and could somebody have been following you around with the camera?
Oh, they should. Yeah. Oh, look, it was hard. I've been to India several times, but it was very hard shooting there. I think anyone who's been there knows there's a lot of chaos, and you know, there's power shortages, and the typical problems I would come across are the fact that they wanted me to be there to make the film, and Jennifer wanted me to be there as like a professional for her. But in one way, they also didn't want me to be there to be capturing when things started going wrong. So for me to get them to get equipment for me was very hard. It took like weeks to get a radio mic. And it took weeks. I begged for a second P2 card for the camera because it would only hold 40 minutes. And they wouldn't get me one. They kept coming up with excuses, like they were trying to foil me. And I'm sure that wasn't their intention, but I was so paranoid by that point. So I had this one little P2 card, and I used to have to sit, you know, wherever I could. I'd fill it, and then I'd sit, and I'd put it onto my laptop for 20 minutes while it was downloading, and patiently hope that nothing great was happening while I was downloading, and then I'd put it back in the camera, wipe it, run back off onto set. So that was mad. So that was like 14-hour days, 14 to 18-hour days for 8 months doing that. Yeah.
With the heat and the noise.
I love the heat. Yeah, the heat was fine, but the noise and the chaos. But I was saying this to Jennifer the other night when she was here for the Q&A, that some of my best days, like I had some terrible days when it's just like for hours, nothing was happening. I was just swinging the camera, and so I was just getting things and nothing, no story. But then some great drama would happen with the relationships on set, and I'd perk up, and we'd all skip home together, I'd skip home, and Jennifer would look exhausted and bedraggled, and she'd look at me and she'd be like, you had a great day, didn't you? I was like, yes, I had a great day, but you know, my great days were her bad days. So we had a love-hate relationship.
Yes, you do. Okay, so the question is with regard to post-production. The 4-year break between the end of the filming hits and then catching up with Jennifer, did you face a lot of challenges in terms of the post-production with your footage and creating this?
Well, yeah, the main problem was money. As any filmmaker knows, there was no budget. We funded the whole thing ourselves. So I worked as, my background was in post-production, documentary, and camera work. So luckily what I did is I just did lots of rough compiles, and then I'd work and work and work, and then take months off and go through the footage. There was 200 hours, so I had a lot to go through. And then I met my great producer, Karina, and she took a huge risk and took me on. And yeah, then that was like a year ago. I think it's our year anniversary. And since then, yeah, we managed to float the rest of post-production ourselves, and that's the only reason it took so long. Honestly, I would have loved to have it edited in a year. But yeah, it was just the financial.
Yes, you, sir.
Actually, I was going to ask a very similar question. I was just going to ask how the film was financed.
Oh, okay.
My mother mortgaged her house, and
That's a good mother, by the way.
yeah, it's a great mother. That's why she gets a whole page in the thank yous. It's just her name. And you know, Karina put in thousands of dollars of hers. I put in thousands of dollars of mine, and all my friends in post-production did deferred and part payments. So yeah, it's a great risk, but you know, we loved it. And at one point, we'd gone too far, where I'd put in so much money, and the film was half done, and we thought, well, we may as well just keep going. So we just threw the rest of it in, and it was a huge risk, but we got it finished. So yeah, we're happy.
That's good. Yes, ma'am.
As an ex-teacher, was daughter ever homeschooled during the time that she was there?
Okay, so Sydney obviously is away from home for a long time.
Yes.
And was she homeschooled?
No, she wasn't. She wasn't homeschooled. She was getting stuff sent from school in America, though. But I don't think she was doing much of it. There was just so much happening on set, and she wanted to hang out on set. She wanted to do the makeup, and Yeah, so she was sent schoolwork and she read a lot of books, but it was a huge chunk of school that she did miss, and now she's actually being homeschooled. So she didn't want to go back to school after that. She was like, why go to school when you can go to India? You know, so she likes going on her mum's sets instead, and she's homeschooled now.
Just one more thing I found very unusual. I mean, documentary directors aside, because in my experience they're all gems, but feature film directors have a stereotypical reputation for being, difficult, demanding, all those things. And interestingly, I feel like the portrait of Jennifer here is as somebody that's trying to be sort of like supportive and a cheerleader to the other people on set. Is that unusual among directors in your experience?
Look, I only know a few feature film directors. Obviously, I know Jennifer the best out of all of them. But she is quite a different beast, yeah, definitely. She's extremely supportive and she's very cheerleading. But part of it was that she felt she had to keep cheerleading in India because she noticed that when she was giving that much encouragement, obviously at the beginning there's so many struggles, she's not cheerleading as much, but she realised through the shoot that the more she cheerleaded, because they weren't very used to it, the better they responded and the more camaraderie there was. So, but I've seen an EPK of her on Surveillance, her last film, or the second film before her last film, and she's the same. I think it's just her personality. She's just like that on set. She's a cheerleader.
A giving person.
Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Anybody, the lucky last question, because if you leave it to me, it's going to be silly, and here it is. What's Jennifer's hair like now?
Well, we're actually the banner on the HotDocs homepage today, which is horrifying for me, but great for Jen, because she can see her hair. So if anyone wants to look, you can see it. It's blonde dreadlocks now, with all these little beads and strings in it. It's very nice. Our cab driver loved it the other night. He kept touching it. Yeah, it's great.
That's fantastic. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Don't